There were about like 20 of us that got started, and we didn't know what we were going to call ourselves, and we all voted. And Matt comes from well, you can tell us more, but you come from a longtime family here that came here and settled here in Santa Fe, and I know you know all about the history of the ski basin and Ernie Blake and Harry, who's still a skier, would be fascinated to talk to you about the early days of skiing. But that's just a little portion I know of your book, which I bought his book recently. And so, okay, that's it.
Yay, Matt.
Hey, yo soy el vaquerito. That's the name of my book, is El Vaquerito, the little cowboy is what it means. And actually it was when I came into the program, the voice. See?
My name is MacGillivray.
I was finishing a book, a very complex book on archaeoastronomy.
It only goes to 12.
And we started having meetings, and we started talking about our stories and this and that. And as time went on, people would say, "Why don't you write something about your childhood in Santa Fe?" And I thought about it and didn't do anything about it. And then finally, for some reason, a few months ago, I said, well, I think I'll start doing that. So the trick with writing is starting. And so I started the first paragraph. And originally grew up after the war, World War II. My dad was an officer, and after he got out, we first lived on Catherine Street on the west side in the barrio, and I learned certain things over there, like how to hypnotize a chicken. That was and then there was an acequia that ran into the at the end of Catherine, and we were warned never to play in that ditch. So immediately we play in the ditch, and dig little caves in the side of the ditch. And one time I heard this sound, and I couldn't figure out what is this sound. So I looked up ditch, and here came the water, and it was being pushed. It was pushing tumbleweeds in front of it, and we just immediately leaped out of the acequia and followed it along and watched it, and this brown water go by, and thought that was so cool, and went back to the house and told Mom about this, and immediately we got in just huge trouble, But it was these little instances that I chose a child's voice when writing this book. I wanted to make it very simple and childlike, so the reader would go back into their own childhood and see what, and imagine how they lived in Santa Fe in the 50s, early 50s, and most of us are of that age group. So this book goes from there to Toledo, in the history of the Toledo mines, and we had a summer home up there, and it started out very primitive and with no water, running water and all of that. And we just loved it at the time. It took like a half a day to get from Santa Fe up to Holy Ghost Canyons, which is in Toledo. But I found that very interesting, and like I said, there was no running water. We had a cable system that go into Holy Ghost Creek to where we would get our water. Well, I talk about those primitive conditions and the mine site of Toledo, which was on Willow Creek, and there's actually a town there, and how people used to live in the 50s, and how my dad and his buddies would take there was a tramway that ran from Toledo all the way to Los Alamitos, which is near Pecos. And they would ride in the ore buckets, you know, on the tramway, sneak on the ore buckets and stuff, and do those kind of hijinks as they were growing up. And as I grew up in the mountains during the summers, I got to know the Lay family very well, and Happy Lay and his wife Delphina had a dairy right in Toledo, and they used to rent out horses and stuff, so I got to know that family pretty well and actually worked for Happy for a while as a wrangler. And during that time, I got totally familiar with the Pecos High Country. And in those days, very few people really did any walking around in the wilderness. Everybody rode horses and packed into the Pecos High Country. And I talk about that within this little book. And that led me into, my parents were skiers. And when they were married, they had their honeymoon in Yosemite, California, one of the few ski areas in the country at that time. And we're a member of the Winter Sports Club in Santa Fe in the 30s. And the Winter Sports Club commissioned a guy by the name of Graham Hancock to do a feasibility study on the areas that would be possible for developing ski areas. And first, the CCC guys first put a road into what is Hyde Park and built the Girl Scout Lodge, and that was the first ski area. They had a rope tow, there at the time. And then they extended the road up to where it is now and created Ski Santa Fe. And Ernie Blake at that time was the first manager of Santa Fe Basin, what was to become Santa Fe Basin. And he did that for a couple of years, and then he and his wife and Pete Totemoff decided to go to one of the areas that was defined in this feasibility study, Twining. And after talking to a guy by the name of Dr. Al Rosen, Ernie decided to try to create this ski area, which he did. And, I talk about these things through a child's eyes, so those of you that skied in the early days will recall what our ski equipment was like. I mean, no edges, the old red chair, how dangerous it was, and yet it was such a neat experience, because the people that skied were like an extended family, and we were doing something dangerous, and it was exciting, and everybody loved it, and those are the kind of remembrances that I tried to picture through my writing in this little cuento that I wrote. And I'll end with this, and what is written on the back. It says, I've always wanted to and was encouraged to share my experience growing up in La Villa de la Real de San Francisco de Asís, Santa Fe, Nuevo Mexico, and environs of the Pecos wilderness during my childhood. In writing it, I chose a child's voice in this story because of the innocence and awe that we all have, with just a bit of shamanistic wisdom. Karma gifted me to incarnate into a fine family in an ancient village that was not in mainstream America, a multicultural town whose denizens still spoke indigenous languages and its first colonial language, Espanol. along with English. Residents are very tolerant and supportive of pintores, escritores, and characters who can practice their crafts in or weird ways in relative peace, and who wove the cultural fabric of the town, who I honor in this quinto. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got some of these.